Coming up on this edition of the Next Man Up podcast, part of the Press Play Podcast Network, Kenny Rhoda and I are joined by special guest Dave Zastudil, 12-year punter in the NFL, including 4 with the Cleveland Browns. Z and I and Roadman talk all things Browns at the bye week as they look ahead to their showdown with the New England Patriots in Foxborough. And Z also takes us inside an NFL locker room, gives us insight on various things, and we look forward to that. Welcome to the Next Man Up podcast, part of the Press Play Podcast Network, brought to you by Chase Smith. Today's episode with co-host Kenny Rhoda and I, Dennis Maniloff, we have a special guest. He needs no introduction, but I'll introduce him anyway. Dave Zastudil, longtime NFL punter. I've known him for decades. He was a Bay High School superstar and then went on to punt for the Ravens, the Browns, and the Arizona Cardinals. Dave, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Guys, I'm happy to be on and look forward to a fun show here.
Hey, you're one of us now. I'm listening to you on the Browns radio network, man. You're one of the name me another punter around the country that is breaking down NFL football like Dave Zastudil. I can't find one.
You know what? The only guy that I can think of, and he's got a bigger audience than I do by far, is Pat McAfee, the Pat McAfee Show. He's out there. He's a pretty big personality. He's a former punter, and I got a lot of guys going, hey, man, why can't you be like Pat McAfee? That guy's got about 3 million followers. He's got his own show. And I say, hey, listen, I'm just happy doing the Browns pregame radio. I'm happy with that.
Well, you're doing a great job. And now that you mentioned McAfee, I think I heard Dan Dockett's talking about him, but he's a different bird. He's not from this planet, so be happy you're from planet Earth, all right, see?
Yeah, you know what? That might be well said. He's quite a character, but like I said, man, I've been a diehard Cleveland Browns guy my whole life. So just kind of, getting out of the NFL and get back into radio and talking Browns football, I couldn't be happier.
Yeah, and we wanted you on, Dave, of course, to talk Browns, and we will do that. But I did want to get after you about one stat that I noticed in your Pro Football Reference box, and that is your career rushing. 4 carries for minus 15 yards. I was a little disappointed to realize that your career rushing totals were 4 for minus 15.
You know what? That's devastating. That's devastating stat. I think a couple of them were some fake punts that went wrong. I remember one time in Baltimore, I was punting, and I can't remember who it was, maybe Cincinnati, and we had a fake onto the right. And I remember Brian Cox, the old linebacker, saw that we had a different gunner in, and he went outside, and the ball got snapped to me, and we had double coverage. So I pulled it and tried to punt it, and either I got hit, sacked. I think I may even hit Bart Scott in the backside. Ball fumbled. I picked it up and got negative yards. So my stats are nothing to brag about when it comes to rushing by far.
But do you remember your one pass attempt? You were 0 for 1. You remember
Atlanta?
it?
Yeah, Atlanta. At Atlanta, and I believe it was 2002.
Yes, it was.
In the old dome, Ron Johnson did a square and post route, and I threw it a little high. He jumped early, and it went through his hands.
There we go. Because people have to realize – and I mean, Dave, again, I consider Dave a friend, and I've known him since his days at Bay High School when he was a multi-sport standout, including quarterback at Bay High, and did a heck of a job in addition to all his punting and kicking duties. So he's certainly capable of handling the ball. All right, Dave, on to the main reason we have you on today is to try to give us some perspective as a former player and as a former Brown, what it might or might not be happening in the Browns locker room as we head into the bye here. Browns 2-4. What is your assessment of what you have seen from the Cleveland Browns in 2019?
Well, I think first of all, being 2-4, you're never. This league's about wins and losses. Always has, always will be. So being 2-4 at the bye, I don't think that is making anybody inside the organization happy. I don't think it makes the fans happy, particularly with the expectations of the season. Now, I can tell you that we've had some good competition. We've played some good teams, but we've also had some pretty key mistakes in the game. And you start off with Tennessee. And do I think it's a little bit of how the preseason goes in today's football? Yeah, probably. I think a lot of teams, specifically with some new players, possibly with some new possible coordinators, it takes a little time to gel. But in the Browns situation, going back a little bit here, I just think expectations were so high from a team that was coming off 2 years ago, not winning one game, to a team that kind of ended the season with a run after changing coaches pretty much mid through the season. So, there was talk that this team has Super Bowl potential, but at the same time, it's still a very young, it's a very, developing type team, and you brought new talent on the roster. So, when we played Tennessee, that game, whether you like it or not, we had 1,000 penalties. I mean, literally 1,000 penalties, and we were still in the game in the third quarter, but we beat ourselves in the foot. And if you look at the 6 games we've played so far, guys, the 2 wins we've had, obviously we're on the road, which is surprising because we're 0-3 at home. But the 2 wins we had, we've really never faced adversity. You went up against a bad Jets team, and you pretty much just used your talent against a team that was depleted, and you had no adversity. Then you go against Baltimore, and you actually got Nick Chubb going in the game. He started getting, the carries that everyone was expecting, and it changed the dynamic of the game. And we never had adversity. But if you look at the 3 losses, Tennessee, the penalties, you look at, and then the big screen pass in the third quarter that killed us. Then you look at specifically the Rams, and we just couldn't stop that D rush. Same with the 49ers, and we got behind early. Rams had that long touchdown run. So I think the point I'm trying to make here is it's a young team that when adversity was hitting in the first 6 games, they just weren't responding very well. I don't know if they didn't have the maturity and the leadership, but they didn't respond. And in the 2 wins we've had, we haven't had to face that. So, in my opinion, you can blame play calling, you can blame Baker Mayfield for not playing well, you can blame the offensive line. But it's a team that is still young and maturing that needs to understand, starting in Game 7, how do we handle adversity and how do we learn from some of these mistakes? And it sounds like, according to John Dorsey, this bye couldn't have come at a better time. And you're also getting 2 starters back on defense. So get away from the game, recharge, learn from some of these mistakes, and try to beat adversity when it hits you in the mouth, specifically against New England.
Dave, I want to ask you about Freddie Kitchens, first time ever head coach at any level. I mean, we were talking on my show today about John Beilein. Even though he's a first-time NBA head coach, he's only been a head coach throughout his career at every college stop. He was never an assistant. So he has the experience of being a head coach, knows what goes into it. Now he's going to try and make it work at the NBA level. Freddie Kitchens doesn't have that experience to fall back on. And for me, my biggest concern coming into the season was Freddie going from running backs coach to interim offensive coordinator to head coach and offensive coordinator. And was this going to be too much for him? And in my opinion, through the first 6 games, I think he's been overwhelmed. How will he be able to get better in season to become a better coach when right now it looks like this is too much for him, like I said, in my opinion?
Well, and everybody's is right to that opinion about coaching. I think if you ask any head coach that's been successful, whether it's Bill Belichick to Bill Parcells, everybody's going to go back and say that first year there was so many things they wish they could have done differently, but they're happy that happened because they learned from it. I can tell you Bruce Arians is a perfect example. I played under Bruce, and he'd be the first one to tell you in his rookie year as a head coach, there's a lot of things that he learned and actually matured from, and that's what led him to be a great coach. And I think Belichick actually came out one time in an article and actually said the same thing. So, the problem we have in Cleveland is we finally have a team that has the talent to be successful. And the first 6 games, I would say 4 of them didn't go all that well. So the first one to blame obviously is going to be the head coach. Now, I can tell you with Freddie Kitchens is I've been with him in Arizona for many years. I consider him a friend. And so when that happens, you kind of know somebody from not just being a football coach. And when I look at Freddie Kitchens and his past, and specifically coming from Bruce Arians over the years in Arizona, Bruce Arians is a very aggressive play calling coach, and he's not going to change. Now, that's going to hurt you in some situations, but in a lot of times it's going to benefit you. And I could tell you in the game against last week against oh my gosh, it's 9 o'clock at night. I can't take
Seattle,
the Seahawks. Excuse me. People always criticize and hey, you're inside the 10. You can run Nick Chubb a bunch of times, go up 23-12 in halftime. And that's just not the philosophy and the personality of Freddie Kitchens. He was trying to score, get the ball back, and try to put more points on the board because he understood what that offense, in Seattle can do to you. So I think really after 6 games, it's a great time to have a bye week. Freddie's going to sit back. He's going to watch film. He's going to learn from some serious decisions that he made, whether he thinks they're positive or negative. He's got 2 weeks to prepare for probably the best team and the best dynasty we've seen in a long time. So we can't give up on him. He's our head coach. He's only been in there for 6 games, and there's a long season to go. But I'd hate to give up on Freddie Kitchens this early because he could end up being one of the greatest coaches in Browns history. But you have to learn from your mistakes. Whether you're a rookie head coach or a rookie player, you're going to have them. But you just got to keep earning the trust and the respect from the players. In the NFL, my experience is if you have the locker room, you're going to always have a great chance of being successful.
Z, I was going to ask you this, whether you knew Freddie Kitchens. I knew you had some ties to him in Arizona. Whether you knew him or you didn't, though, there is no question that Freddie Kitchens is being let down to a degree by his quarterback, Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield does not look like the same guy that we saw in the second half of 2018. Of course, you could say there are a variety of factors, including the line, perhaps the play calling. Maybe he's not 100% physically. The receivers aren't quite on the same page. When you step back and analyze, and as you've seen Mayfield throwing the ball this year as opposed to last year, what have you seen or not seen from him?
Well, what I think the second year of an NFL quarterback is probably the hardest. And I'll tell you why is because, Baker's got 7, 8, 9, and including the preseason a little bit this year, games on tape. And when you go into your second year, coaches are going to go look back at that tape. They're going to see his tendencies. They're going to see where, maybe some of the plays that were successful compared to the plays that weren't successful. And they're going to now have a little bit of a strategy on how to attack him. His first rookie year, nobody really knew who he was because they only saw him from college. So he's seen a lot of different looks this year. I think there's coaches that once they get up to the line, they're disguising their defense a little bit, bringing blitzes off the edge, trying just to confuse him. And I think it's worked to a degree, but I think as Ryan Lindley, the quarterback's coach, said, Baker Mayfield after 6 games is a way better Mayfield after the first 1 or 2 games. So I think there's no question. To answer the other part of your question, I think the offensive line has not helped him. I think Greg Robinson has been inconsistent, and John Dorsey basically said that in his press conference today. And when you're feeling the pressure as a quarterback and you're seeing different defenses come at you, it's a little bit hard because you feel flustered. Even when you have the pocket, you still have that presence of mind to say, is somebody on my backside? And you're not 100% comfortable. What happens in a quarterback? You throw off the back part of your foot, you're throwing on the run, and there's where the accuracy comes into play. But I can tell you, going forward, I think Baker's a good quarterback, and I think he has a chance to be very successful, but you got to protect him. And I think he has to continue to educate himself in the meetings and in the film, because those first 6 games, I can guarantee you the Bill Belichick's and the Mike Tomlins are going to probably stick to that same philosophy of trying to confuse him. But if he can adjust and learn, I think he'll be a lot better quarterback.
We're thrilled to have Dave Zastudil joining us here on the Next Man Up podcast. Kenny Rhoda, Dennis Manoff, and Z breaking it down here at the bye week. How much can get accomplished at the bye week, Dave? When you go back and think about, your career with 3 different teams, as long as you were in the NFL, what can you do? Do you have to limit what you try and correct? Because the Browns have penalty issues. They've got offensive line issues, quarterback issues, head coach, it's new to him. How much can you get done in one bye week after just 6 games?
Well, I think the biggest part of a bye week, any former player will tell you, is you try to get your team healthy. We have a bunch of players that have been banged up, Greedy Williams, Denzel Ward in particular, and I'm sure there's a bunch of guys that are banged up that the media doesn't even know about. I mean, they're in the training room every day. They're hampered with maybe an ankle, maybe a little bit of a knee, but it's just not really coming up in the injury report. So those guys get healthy too. And then what happens is you come in Monday, you watch film, Tuesday, Wednesday, you get on the field, starting a little bit install of what New England's showing them so they understand, they're familiar with them. So when they come back and practice on the following Wednesday, they already know what New England's going to come after them, and they're ready to go full steam ahead. They're rested. Guys are getting healthy. And quite frankly, it's like anything. It's a mini vacation for players. They get back to their hometown, maybe go see a Friday night football game. All that does is re-energize your batteries, knowing that they got a run to come. So if I'm Freddie Kitchens, and I've been in these meetings before, guys, he's probably going to come in and say, guys, it's a new season. We're 0-0. We can't help but we were 2-4. That's in the past. We start now. We're 0-0. We take care of business. We're a playoff team, and it starts with New England. He's going to tell them that nobody in the world probably thinks they're going to win this game, but he knows the talent in this room. He knows the character in this room, and he believes, and he hopes they believe that they can go win this game. And he's going to. That's the message I think he's going to send to them. That, hey, listen, guys, no one thinks we can win this. Let's stick to limiting the penalties, limiting the mental mistakes, and getting back to playing the football that we can play, and we're going to give us a great chance to win the game.
Z, we mentioned that you were a former punter for the Ravens for 4 years, Browns for 4, and Arizona Cardinals for 4. So you've been in locker rooms, in NFL locker rooms for more than 10 years when you played from 2002 to 2013. I'm curious, and you were in winning, locker rooms of teams that were winning and locker rooms of teams that were losing. What do you think the locker room is like at 2-4, and how do leaders emerge in an NFL locker room over the course of a season? You famously, one of your teammates was Ray Lewis. So that's, a guy that led, just by breathing. How does leadership come about in an NFL locker room, and how might it be coming about in a Browns locker room when the team is 2-4?
Well, I think it's a great question. I think on the teams that I've been on that have been bad or not been very successful, you just knew the talent around you. I mean, we're all men. We're all grown men. Most of us with family and kids. I mean, we understand what it takes to be successful in the NFL, and you can look around the locker room and understand if you have the leadership, if you have the skilled position talent. And when you know you don't have that, quite frankly, either you're knowing it's a 2 to 3 year plan, you're knowing that you're out to prove to the general manager, the coach, that you want to be on the team next year, and it's just a little different mentality. When you're in a locker room with a Ray Lewis, when I was in the locker room with Larry Fitzgerald and a Carson Palmer, Patrick Peterson, it's a different feeling. When you know you have the talent, that's when you know that you can go off and win 5 to 6 games in a row, even if you're a 2-4 team. But this team's frustrated because of the little things, the penalties. They're beating themselves in the foot, and they know that. I mean, they know that. So I think the confidence in that locker room when they get back from this mini break, I still think it's going to be very high. But they understand as a team that they got to draw a line in the sand here and say, hey guys, we got to start coming together, a team, and not beating ourselves in the foot and beating ourselves. Other than that, we're going to be a 7-9, 6-10 team. And I think that's going to start with Freddie Kitchens' message after the break. And I think that, hey, this is a team that's going to learn from their mistakes, but they're too good of a talent not to sit in the locker room and believe that they won't be good. Because I've been in those locker rooms, and you just know. But this team has the talent. They know that.
Dave, let's try and find the good in a 2-4 start through 6 games with one of the, if not the first, the second or third youngest team in the NFL with a newbie as a head coach at any level. You are what your record says you are. You're 2-4. You're in tied for second place in the division, 2 games back. But what did you see either in the wins or in maybe a quarter here, a quarter there, that makes you think they can get this thing turned around and be back in that race come the end of the season?
Well, here's the reason I think so is because I don't think Baker Mayfield is playing at the level that he's capable of playing. So what I mean by that is I think, there's only one way to go for him, and that's up. I look at the receiver cores, and you have just a ton of talent. You get Higgins back, and hopefully healthy here, and he's going to come back and make an impact because of the relationship he has with Baker. But I think the biggest thing on offense is you have arguably the best running back in the league in Nick Chubb. And even if they get him on screens, they get him outside, they run him up the middle, this guy, even against a good defense, had 87 yards and only 20 carries on a game that against the 49ers, they look terrible. So you have a guy in the backfield that's a difference maker, and you have wide receivers that are difference makers too. And I think that if they can just get consistent up front, get a game plan together where Nick Chubb is the focus of that offense, I think this offense can do great things. Now, if you flip the script on defense, for some reason, I think that they're kind of, I think they've regressed a little bit. And I think you can attribute that to losing your two top corners, Denzel Ward and Greedy Williams. I think Olivier Vernon, I think early on, he hasn't been an impactful player that I thought that they were hoping he would be. But then you look at special teams, and I think Austin Seibert and the Hammer, Jamie Gillum, are arguably two of the best combos in the league right now as rookies. And I think Mike Prefer's done a good job. So, when you look at this team at 2-4 guys, and we all watch the games, it's no secret that we're a play here, a decision here, an interception here, a tip ball here, away from being probably, maybe a 5-1, 4-2 team. So it's close. And when you have the talent, you look at the schedule in the second half of the season, take New England out of the mix, there's not a game on there that I wouldn't probably put a bet that the Browns will win those games. And I think that's a positive to look at the second half of this season after the bye.
See, I want to take you back to week 5. The Browns are coming off of the victory, the stirring victory at Baltimore to move to 2-2. They even have the half-game lead in the division because of the head-to-head over Baltimore. They go to San Fran, more specifically Santa Clara, California, and just get boat raced right out of there 31-3. What do you think happened there? Was it as simple as lack of preparation? I mean, because you heard Kitchens say, everybody's to blame. Was it as simple as just not being prepared? Was it absolutely that you were overmatched by the mighty 49ers? Or, how did you see that particular loss?
This one was tough because I had a bad feeling before the game even started when we were doing the pregame show, and I'll tell you why. Browns were coming off their first AFC North matchup with arguably the team that some people think will win the division, and they went in and absolutely just dominated the game. They won 40-25 in Baltimore on the road. Nobody thought that they would do that. It was an emotional game. It was a big game. Now you got a short week. So you got an emotional game against a rival division foe, and it's a short week now, and you have to travel all the way across the country on a 3-hour time change, play another night game against a team that, quite frankly, was 3-0, but really nobody really knew how good the 49ers were. So I think you combine all those things against a defensive line that arguably – I think showed up better than what we saw against the LA Rams. I mean, Nick Bosa, Armstead, Buckner. I mean, these guys are massive guys. They showed what they did against Jared Goff. I think he had less than 100 yards passing. So I think if you combine all that, you're playing against a 49ers team that I think now is the real deal. I think defensively, they're arguably probably the best defense that I've seen. And you're coming off an emotional win and you're on the road all the way to the West Coast. It was the perfect recipe on a short week. And I think the schedule may have had a little bit to do with that game, but at the same time, you got to play the game. But that's why Coach Billick always told us when we were in Baltimore, guys. If you win at home and you split on the road, you're a guaranteed playoff team. Problem is we haven't won on home, and then a game like the 49ers that happens during the season. The problem is we need to win at home to let a game like that happen if it does happen.
All right, for us who have never done it, Dave Zastudil, why is it so tough to travel East Coast to West Coast and play a game as far as the time change and everything along those lines? It would seem like to me you're getting to play later out there, so it would be an advantage where when they come here, they've got to play earlier.
Yeah, it's a point that I understand that, but when you're playing, a game in Baltimore on it, and you have a short week, so it's an extra day. Basically, you're not getting rest, you're not getting in the training room, you're not getting the bumps and bruises gone, and then you now have to take Saturday. You have to travel, you have to pack, say bye to your family. You're getting in a plane, and some of these guys are 6'5", 300 pounds, and you're sitting in a plane seat for 5 hours. Then you're getting off, you're getting in a bus, going to a hotel room. You're 3 hours, so now your body's all changed. So if it's 7 o'clock there, it's 10 o'clock back home. So you're losing 3 hours of sleep. Maybe you're not sleeping that well because your body's off. You think it's East Coast time, and then you're playing a team that, quite frankly, was ready to get after you, and you didn't see it coming. It's just a pretty big combo, and sometimes we call it a trap. And the Browns, they got trapped, I think, in that game.
Z, it seems to me like you've heard Freddie Kitchens. He doesn't want to say it flat out, but it's almost like he's wondering sometimes about some of these injured guys. Like, hey, let's go. Come on, get healthy. And maybe I'm misreading his between the lines stuff, but have you been around coaches who were kind of impatient with injuries such as, hamstrings that are notoriously slow to heal? Have you been around coaches who are like, let's go? I need, the best ability is availability, that type of thing.
D-Man, I'll tell you what, when Eric Mangini came in as the head coach of the Cleveland Browns, he put a lot of things, if you remember, on the field: communication, teamwork, pride. He put all those things up in the building as well. But the one thing, the first one he did was in the training room. And as soon as you walked in, there was a huge sign above the trainer's office that says durability is more important than ability. So I think you're kind of reading what I'm saying here. There's coaches out there that, hey man, if you're nursing an injury, you don't really you're not really part of this team. And you get the feeling as a player, hey, I got to get back out there. And some coaches that are old school say, hey, you at 90% is better than, some of my guys at 100%. But if you're going to milk this thing, some coaches get impatient. I'm not saying Freddie's doing that right now because hamstrings can be kind of fickle. But there's no question he wants his guys out there because he knows how much they'd impact his team.
All right, so Browns are 2-4, and they get the bye. They're playing the world champs. What if it goes bad in this upcoming game, Dave? What if they fall to 2-5? They get rejuvenated. They try and fix some things. They get guys healthy, and you're playing the defending Super Bowl champs, but still a loss is a loss. You are what your record says you are. It's 2-5. Do you think this team is mentally tough enough as one of the youngest teams in the league at 2-5, even if they lose after the bye week, to still be able to turn this thing around in the remaining games that they would have?
Yeah, I do, only because if you look at last year, you're coming off 1-15, 0-16, and when Baker came in, they went to 7-8-1 with the head coaching change in the middle of the season with a really young team. So if they've done it before, there's no reason they can't do it again. I think the schedule favors them. I think players, we all talk in the locker room, we know the schedule. They're going to see there's an opportunity there to really pull off, something that nobody thinks they can do. And all this team needs to get is a win. In the NFL, if you get a win, it changes everything. You come in on Monday morning for meetings, you're optimistic. You got your fans, you got your players talking, you got your family congratulating you, and you start feeling pretty good about yourself. And when Wednesday practice comes, you get a little more hop and pep in your step. You got a team coming up that now you're favored to win, and you start getting some momentum. So this team, really, to be honest with you, they just need to get a win under their belt. But they got a challenge in New England. I remember we were in Arizona, and we went in opening day. And I think under Bill Belichick, they'd never lost at home ever. I think opening day under Bill Belichick, we went in, no one gave us a chance, and we beat them. But we had the mentality that we took it as a business trip. Coach really prepared us. Hey, this is no different than when we're playing anywhere else, but we're playing against a great football team, so we got to be great. And he says, we're going to take this as a business trip. We're going to go take care of business. We're going to get home, and we're going to start building something this year. And it was a pretty firm message. Guys bought into it, and we played mistake-free football and beat them. So you're playing a great football team up there, but, hey, those guys still got to line up and play the game. So I still think with the talent the Browns have, I think they still have a good shot to take it down to New England if they play their game.
All right, so you said you were with the Cardinals when you beat Belichick in the opener, right? Do you remember what year that was?
Or
which one it was?
It was 2000. I want to say maybe 11 or 12,
okay,
if I remember.
Yeah,
I think we started off 3-0, and then it might not have been an opener. I thought it was, but it was one of the first 3 games. But I'm pretty sure that year it was the opener because there was some stat that New England never lost at home as an opener. So I'd have to go back and check. It's been a while.
The point is, the year actually didn't matter. The point is, you went into Foxborough with the team and beat Belichick. What was that locker room like afterwards? Obviously jubilant and everything else, but I mean, did you guys feel like you'd won the Super Bowl basically?
Yeah, I mean, it was. It definitely was a great victory. We were celebrating the locker room, but it kind of just go to show you, hey, when you play your game and you play as a team and you minimize your mental errors, and I remember that's what it always was about with Ken Wisenhunt and Bruce Arians when I was there, was always your mental errors. If you can lower your mental errors, and that's why Freddie Kitchens came out and said, hey, if we go 10 mental errors and under, hey, I'm pretty happy. In that one game, I think they had 1 or 2. So that's coming from probably the old Bruce Arians days. But if you play your game, you can beat anybody. Anybody can beat anybody, especially when you have the talent like Cleveland does.
All right, what did you make from Freddie's press conference the other day about we are a group, we are not a team. We need to do your job and become a team. Well, what do you think he was trying to say there to the media, and do you think he used the media there to get the message out to his players?
Yeah, I do. I think that Freddie is a guy, he's old school. He everything he's ever done, he's earned. He's not a guy that's ever kissed anybody's rear. He works hard, and opportunities came to him because he's earned them, because he's worked hard. So he understands through all his years that this group has to be a team. And I think, he referred to some individual guys maybe looking at their own talent and what they can do individually. And he says, hey, for us to go where we want to go, we got to gel and become a team. Now, I can tell you about Freddie Kitchens, too, is when you look at some of the play calls early in the season that people were wondering why they went empty backfield. If I went back and watched some of this tape, and there was a few receivers that were open on some of these plays that were turnover plays, or maybe they just, went 4 and out. And there's been some audibles. So what I like about Freddie is, even though it may look like it was his decisions, I thought the opposite. Some of the plays, I thought it was just misreads by the quarterback and maybe the offensive receivers. They had some miscommunication, and he took 100% of the blame. He said, blame me. That's my fault. I got to prepare better. I got to call better plays. And when you got a head coach that is taking the blame on something that, quite frankly, in some of these situations, I don't think it was his fault, that's how you earn a locker room. That's how you become a team. And I think that's something the players respect. And if he can get them to respect him, he knows he can steer them on a winning streak.
Well, Z, while you and Kenny were talking, I had the opportunity to go back. Let's take you back to 2012. Your Arizona Cardinals are going to open the season under Coach Ken Wisenhunt with a victory against the Seattle Seahawks at home. Then you go to Belichick and beat him 20-18 in his home opener. You were correct there. His home opener, you win 20-18. And this is what's fascinating about this season and why I wanted to ask you. You go 3-0 after beating the Eagles, 4-0 after beating the Dolphins in overtime, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 losses in a row. I know you have a very good memory in general. What do you recall about how and why that season went off the rails?
Well, what happened is we got off to a great start at 3-0, like you said, and we started losing games in a way that we shouldn't have lost, and then we started kind of just folding as a team. I didn't think we had the leadership on that team that really, when this adversity hit us, that we could break this funk and get out of this, and it just spiraled down out of control. I think it cost Ken Whisen his job, if I remember, either that year or the year after. It was unacceptable to the organization. And as players, we had guys like Larry Fitzgerald, but we just didn't have the quarterback position and have some consistent play on offense. And I think it started spiraling downhill. Guys didn't believe in each other. Guys started pointing fingers. And when you have that, and then the head coach loses the locker room, which I can guarantee you, and I remember Ken Whisen did, it's just a recipe for disaster. Now you look at Cleveland, they're kind of the opposite. Start off doing pretty bad, but they have the talent and they have a quarterback that guys do follow. And I do think they have a coach they respect. So when people always talk about this season's over, fire Freddie Kitchens, I thought John Dorsey made a good point in his press conference was, hey, listen, I believe in this team. I think we have a long season to go. And I think he understands that this team's close and he just wants to, he wants to just watch this thing play out. So we'll just have to wait and see.
Z, I know that Larry Fitzgerald, just an awesome guy. And as you mentioned, not only a phenomenal player, but a great leader. But I'm wondering do you think Odell Beckham Jr. in his first year with the Browns, with one playoff game under his belt in his career coming into this year, is he capable of being a leader in the Browns locker room?
Yeah, I think Odell Beckham, just by who he is and his play, garners a lot of respect. And I've heard from guys that was with him in New York that he was actually a great locker room guy. I think it benefits the Browns and benefits him that he's with Jarvis Landry. There's no secret of the history between those two. And I think Jarvis is a team guy and a fierce competitor. Never was a guy to point fingers. So I think that has really helped Odell. And also he's getting older. I mean, you start maturing as a player in the league. And when you're surrounded by good people in a good organization, you're going to do nothing but be in a position to succeed. So I think, the thing with the Browns is they're a very young football team. I mean, they're running backs in his second year, quarterback second year, Jarvis Landry, Odell, they're still in their 20s. The offensive line is kind of the right guard, I think, is something they weren't expecting this year to happen. And quite frankly, Greg Robinson's kind of a journey guy that found a place last year, but he's being a little inconsistent. So this is a team that you're looking at a quarterback to be your leader, and he's only in his second year. And I think Baker's personality, who he is, I think he's got to kind of put aside some of these social media things he hears and like the response to Antonio Brown. Those are things I think as he matures, he's going to realize, hey, that's probably not the best thing to do, but he's got to keep that confidence, that moxie in him. And that's what's led him to this success. And I think over his career, and that's what players flock to. They flock to the quarterback.
Dave, when we look at the AFC North, how much of an advantage is it for the Browns to be playing in arguably one of the worst divisions in the league? I mean, we look at the Indians. I'll go back to an example there where they play in, the AL Central. That's been a huge crutch for them, an advantage. They can fall back on it. Now, it hasn't helped them or the Twins getting out of the AL Central in the playoffs the last 2 years. Both teams have been swept, but it gets you to the playoffs. So is this a positive, too, for the Browns with their 2-4 record that, if they can get to 8-8, maybe 9-7, that in this division, that might be good enough to win it and get in the playoffs?
Yeah, I just respectfully disagree a little bit about the AFC North. I mean, Baltimore's 4-2. They're going to be a force to reckon with, specifically after Lamar Jackson and how I think he's just going to do nothing but get better. And then you look at the Browns, who I think is going to be a better second half team after the bye. And I think the Steelers, they went into San Diego and actually went up 21-0 on a team that has a ton of talent with a quarterback that's a third string. So, as their quarterback situation improves, they're still, even if this quarterback goes in and plays just normal, consistent ball, they're still a very good football team. So the only team I look at that is pretty much kind of in a tough spot right now is the Cincinnati Bengals. So I still think Baltimore and Pittsburgh will be tough games based on the rivalry and based on the talent. But we got to take advantage of games like, Miami, and you got to take advantage of Buffalo and Denver. because this AFC North, no matter what, will still be some big games, but it's huge in the general sense that we have 5 games that we can make huge differences and we can make big strides in an AFC North and still win the division at 9-7.
See, I just look at who they've defeated: Dolphins, Cardinals, Steelers, Bengals, and they haven't beaten anybody of substance or significance, in my opinion. And the 2 good teams they played, they lost to the Chiefs and the Browns. So I'm not as much of a believer in Lamar Jackson against better teams. I think if you force him to throw, you will beat him, and his weakness will be exposed. So that's why I think this is still, even though people think I'm crazy, I picked the Browns to go 10-6 and win this division. I still think they will do that, and I think the AFC North, they're going to go 5-1 in the North, and that's going to help them.
Yeah, and that I can see that happening too. I just hate to put a sleeper on the Ravens and Steelers just because of my history with them, and I just know how big those games are. It's almost like, a mini Ohio State Browns. Ohio State Michigan, because of how close these teams are, and every team understands how big those games are. And the only reason, Kenny, I think that those teams will be pretty competitive against us in the future coming up here, because you have 2 great head coaches.
We'll agree to disagree on Mike Tomlin, but I get where you're coming from with Harbaugh.
I like Tomlin too. Z, thank you so much for taking the time, but I'm not going to let you, Kenny and I aren't letting you off the hook until you answer one more question. We won't put you on the spot, but we are going to put you on the spot. By the end of this season, and what I mean by that is we're not going to hold you to this prediction, all right? By the end of this season, what is the Cleveland Browns record, and do they make the playoffs?
I think this team is going to be either a 9-7 football team or a 10-6. The reason I say that is because I think it all hinges on this New England game. I look at that schedule. We're due against the Steelers. We've already beaten Baltimore, Cincinnati twice, and I think Buffalo, Denver are games that we can win, no question. So I think this New England game is going to be huge. So I think if they beat them, you're looking at 10-6. I think if they lose, you're looking at 9-7. Just because I think the talent's there.
All right. Well, Dave, anything more for Dave, Kenny, that you can think of?
Yeah, Dave, I've never admitted this before, but as a kid growing up, I either wanted to be a field goal kicker or a punter. And I am, to this day, one of my regrets in our high school football team stunk. And I didn't realize it then that, you know what, that's a good thing if you want to be a punter or a kicker, right? You want a team to stink, and you get to punt the ball so much. So I never went after my dream. So you and Ray Guy, Bobby Walton, Roy Jarella, Pete Gogolak, Nick McMayer, all these guys, I grew up worshiping punters and kickers. So it was an honor for me to have Chris Gardocki on my show back in the day, and it's an honor to talk football with another one of the punters who have lasted over 10 years in the NFL and been on both sides of the Browns-Ravens rivalry and everything like that. So I'm jealous of you and your career. I would trade my broadcasting career to be a punter in the NFL.
Well, Kenny, hey, listen, those are very. I love those words, man. I can't thank you enough. It's been quite a journey. I was a quarterback in high school. My dream was to play at the college level as a quarterback, and I think God just had different plans for me. But it's funny, I'm in my basement right now, and I'm staring at a framed picture on the wall that D-Man did an interview back in 2006. So I've been always very blessed of how you guys have treated me in the media, specifically back here in Cleveland as a local guy, and always gave a punter a chance to speak his mind, and always respected what we did. So I appreciate you guys, and very respectful of the job you guys done over your long career in Cleveland too.
How about that, D-Man? You told us about how you went Spicoli in high school, and I just told you how I wanted to be a punter growing up. How about that?
Yeah, I mean, no question about it. And what people have to understand, I know this sounds like I'm bragging, but it ain't bragging if it's true. Z was a multi-sport star in high school, and he hit some of the longest home runs that I've ever seen by a high school kid. So this was a guy who was just a natural no matter what he did, and but also a brainiac. What was your major, Z, at Ohio? Was it marketing and finance or something? Double major?
Yeah, I was a double major in finance and marketing, and it led to an insurance career, believe it or not.
Well, I can tell you this much: by adding you to the show, the IQ of this show went up dramatically. So that's always a good thing.
Yes, indeed. All right, Dave.
So my question, I get one question back to you guys.
All right.
Okay.
What do you guys think at the end of the day? What do you think the record for the Browns will be? And I want both your guys' thoughts here.
I said last year.
I'm going to punt on that one.
Nice job, D-Man. I picked the Browns, Dave, to win the division last December before the season was over. I looked at the Steelers without Bell, without Antonio Brown. Roethlisberger's up there in age, and now he's out for the year. Tomlin should be fired. I don't think they are a 500 team this year. I think they'll be lucky to win 5 games, and they already traded their first-round pick away, which is stupid for a secondary guy like that. So they're not going to win the division. The Bengals will be lucky to win maybe 3 games, if that, so they stink. And I don't believe in Lamar Jackson. So I picked them way back when, forecasting it at 10-6. Now, the 2-4 start, I actually, when I played the schedule game, had them going 3-4 to start the season. So they're kind of, even though they're down, they're kind of right on track for me. So I'm going to go 10-6. I'm not going to back off of it. Big second half turnaround, and they win the division. That's I'm sticking to that.
All right. After my initial punt, I'm going to come in with the negativity and the pessimism. I see the Browns finishing 8-8. And I see them getting pinched out of the playoffs, not winning the the North. It goes to the Ravens. I'm thinking AFC Central because in 1985, the Browns famously went 8-8 and won the division. I don't see it happening here, though. And because to me, the schedule game, I played it at the beginning of the season, and I was in the 9-7, 10-6 range. The problem is, as you get into this season, you realize the Denver Broncos are no slouch, certainly on the defensive end. You're going to have to deal with them on the road. All of a sudden, the Buffalo Bills are no pushover, even though you've got them at home. The Bills have a heck of a defense. You still got the Steelers twice, the Ravens once, Z's Arizona Cardinals late in the year.
And I will be at that game.
Probably a different version of what you saw at the beginning of the year with Kingsbury and Murray. So the point is, the favorable 9 that came after Belichick is not so favorable to me anymore. I don't think it's as easy as we thought it was going to be, and therefore I see 8-8 because I like where Z's coming from. I think that a victory over the Patriots could completely turn this season on its head. The problem is I don't see a victory over the Patriots, even though Belichick will be on a short week after Monday night. I think it's too unrealistic to expect the Browns to go in there and win.
And how about this? I'll throw this in. Ravens are going to lose to the Seahawks, the Patriots, the Texans, the Rams, the Niners, the Bills, and the Browns. And that puts them at 8-8. How about that? I'm just laying it out there, man. I'm looking at their schedule, and I'm thinking they ain't beating Seattle in Seattle. They ain't beating the Patriots. The Texans, they're not beating Deshaun Watson, in my opinion. The Rams, after the trades they made, are going to get better, right? The Bills are a good defensive team. And the Browns. That Browns game on December 22nd, I think, will determine who wins this division. And the Browns already beat them once, and this time it's in Cleveland. So I'm going, worst case scenario, 9-7 for the Browns, and they win the tiebreaker to win the division. But 10-6, I'm sticking to it.
Yeah, and I can guarantee that message is in the Browns locker room. They understand what's ahead of them. They understand how tough their schedule is for the AFC North. So, hey, get away with this weekend, come back, refresh, regrouped, and I think this team is just too good, and I think they know that. So I'm excited. I mean, I think this bye week was good for everybody, and we come back and we like Freddie Kitchens. I'm hoping we'll say we're 0-0.
Dave Zastudil, thank you so much for joining us on the the Next Man Up podcast, part of the Press Play Podcast Network, the bye week edition.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. Have a good night.
You got it.